Chapter 3, Home Sweet Home. By the time we were rescued and returned home, my mom had already moved to a new place and remarried. And I thought to myself, this time things will be different. We have a second chance now with a new father. But of course, that was just a dream. The story just became so repetitive. It wasn't long before my stepfather began physically and mentally beating us and my mom. It got so bad that the bruises would stick around for 4 or 5 days. That is when it crossed the line to abuse. Eventually, my mother got a divorce, but the pattern of abusive relationships didn't end there. She would cling on to the same type of man until she would reach her tipping point. But then she'd find someone else equally abusive. For me, the pain of going back home to an unstable family was almost just as bad as being abducted by someone I loved. But I don't hate my birth mother. I don't want to give off that impression. She is actually a brave woman. She went through so many different things in her life. She was beat and tortured and put through so much drama, and yet she looked out for her children as long as she could, although the circumstances were always really bad. She never had an angel that was there to protect her. She had an angel that was there to hurt her. But God was always there with her, as God always is, in His miraculous ways. That is such a cool thing to even know that. She didn't always have it easy, but her intentions were always good. When things would happen and her children were getting beat, she would take us to so many different beautiful places just to be safe. She always did her best to make sure our safety was the number one issue. The only thing I truly believe that my birth mother wanted, because Granddad tells me now, was to have love and safety. She never had any of that. I think people looking to take advantage just smelled the fear in her. And although she wanted all these great things for us and for herself, the reality is our living conditions got worse. I worried more about her because I knew I was always being taken care of. She never even knew that Jesus was carrying me at the time. Had she known, there wouldn't have been any homelessness. There wouldn't have been any starving nights. There wouldn't have been any of those difficult things. I could always handle the hardships we faced because we always faced them together. But nothing ever hurt more than her abandonment. The loneliest time for me came at the age of 7. My mother, in her desperation, packed us in a car and put us in foster care. She told us she would get herself together and come back for us, but she never did. At my last foster home, I stayed with Bula Smith. She was a wonderful lady, and she gave me back my childhood. Jesus did carry me during my most difficult times, but that still didn't change the fact that our lives weren't getting any easier. I believe there were 3 foster homes in my community, and they were all black families. I spent most of my foster care time in the Cleveland area. The physical loneliness was hard to adjust to, but eventually I let my faith deal with it. As time passed, there were many more ordeals with my family, but I soon realized God was putting me in a place where I could not be touched or harmed. I could see my own story in the Footprints in the Sand poem, because now I believe that Jesus carried me the entire time. I was in the foster care system for about 6 years, and that's when I met Adrian Parlett. He was my foster brother, but I think of him as family. Even today, my sisters call him their brother. At the age of 13, I was placed back with my sisters, and believe it or not, Byron. I looked at it as a way to recover some sense of family. We were in a very poor section of Cleveland called Glenville. It was a new territory for us, about 150 miles north of my hometown of Columbus. St. Clair and East 99th Street in Cleveland, where we lived, was a tough neighborhood to call home. But I did. I had to. There was a lot of drugs around, and selling dope was an easy way for me to make money, but I did not enjoy it. I didn't do that for very long. It's a smaller version of Compton, California, complete with drive-bys, crackheads, and street pharmacists. It's the kind of place where young black men die almost every day. Living in this new ghetto, I noticed there weren't many people that looked like me. People would stare because I was a light-skinned black kid. My parents were biracial. My dad is, who knows, and my mom is Italian and German, but I just consider myself black. One thing about Columbus, Ohio, is that a black man and a white woman can be married and have a family and not be looked at as messed up. The Cleveland neighborhood was not as liberal. My hometown was kind of different from Cleveland. I can't say I was madly in love with the city. It took me a while to warm up to it, especially because I felt I wasn't accepted right away. There was a period during my time there when I got caught up in what I never wanted to be a part of, selling drugs. I had to support myself, and when you live in the hood, you have very little options. But I hated it. Even at 13, I knew exactly what it was and how it was killing the people around me. But of course, as he always does in his extraordinary ways, God turned that time into a chance for me to reflect on everything that had happened to me. I think he wanted me to understand my childhood rather than repress it, as I had done up until then. I began asking myself, why am I this way? Why am I afraid of the dark? Why do I do things this way? Why do I think someone is going to suffocate me? Why am I worried about this person that is standing behind me who has nothing but great intentions? Then I began to learn about myself, and it was like, wow, that happened to me. You keep going and going until it gets to the point where you are either going to deal with it or you're not. Some people stand up and say, my strength won't let me fall. I am too strong to fail. Today, we have to keep it moving. You know what I mean? That's a good thing. As I reflected on my life, I decided I would not become another statistic. I didn't want to be just another black man dead in the hood. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't going to take the route of selling drugs, so I stopped. I'm grateful. He gave me that opportunity to think, because if he hadn't, my entire childhood would be torture to even reminisce about. That's why when I consider my youth, I don't think I missed out on anything, because in my heart, I can always go to a beautiful place. I have closure from the past because I have God. It's a chapter in my life that I would prefer not to open up again. It's like if you jump back into some dirt after you take a shower. I just remember where I come from, and I don't look back to the pain. What inspires me today is purity and cleanliness. Those are the things that keep me going. If I do look back, there were some really bad, terrible things that happened to me as a child. But before I think that it is me that it happened to, I remember the poem Footprints in the Sand by Mary Stevenson, and know that my Father carried me the entire way on his shoulders. I know that nothing will happen to me because Jesus is with me. And since Bizzy mentioned Footprints in the Sand by Mary Stevenson more than once in this chapter, let's take a look. It's from 1936. One night I had a dream. I dreamed I was walking along the beach with the Lord, and across the sky flashed scenes from my life. For each scene, I noticed two sets of footprints. One belonged to me, and the other to the Lord. When the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand. I noticed that many times along the path of my life, there was only one set of footprints. I also noticed that it happened at the very lowest and saddest times in my life. This really bothered me, and I questioned the Lord about it. Lord, you said that once I decided to follow you, you would walk with me all the way. But I have noticed that during the most troublesome times in my life, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why in times when I needed you most, you should leave me. The Lord replied, my precious, precious child, I love you and would never, never leave you during your times of trial and suffering. When you saw only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you.